Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. Happy holidays. I'm really excited about today's guest coming right outside of Dallas, Texas, Argustic Dunbar. He goes by AD. He's a life coach, lifestyle coach. He shows men what it looks like to live an outstanding life. It's going to be a really fascinating conversation around lifestyle, masculinity, and I'm really happy to have him on. So, AD, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself, and I'm excited to dive into the conversations.
Yeah, for sure. I tend to have very interesting dialogues with people. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I work full time. I work in the IT space as a software developer. I've always been people centric. I've always been a people person. I'm married. I have a beautiful wife and three kids. And I found myself in a spot where a lot of men, I think, find themselves, especially if they're married, where their marriage is not is sexless. They're not enjoying it. There's not a lot of respect or warmth or admiration or anything like that. And it got to the point where like we were living together and not enjoying each other's company, right?
Hmm.
And I started investing in myself. Um, and we're now to a point where like she can't keep her hands off me. She wants to bring me other women she misses me. There's so much like the relationship is just so much better. But what it comes from is me having a better relationship with myself. Right. And I like to teach men that like it all comes back to yourself, your level of self-love, your level of self-respect, and your level of self-acceptance, right? And self-acceptance is just understanding who you are, all the quirky things without judging yourself for it. And I really do want to, show men how to live an outstanding life, a life on their terms, so they don't give a fuck what anyone else thinks about them.
Yeah, and I love that. So one thing is, what is the biggest problem you see in modern day relationships?
The biggest problem I see is that, or we're saying, so we didn't say marriages, we said relationships. Okay. I think this is gonna sound sexist. Women have too many options. Women have too many options. Okay. Optionality is good for men, I believe, but I think that it could be good for women, but I think it's problematic, right? So I forgot to ask, Chris, are you married at all?
Yeah, I'm married.
Okay. Does your wife have more clothes than you do in the closet?
Uh,
Does it who does it take longer to get dressed, you or her?
Probably me. Yeah,
Really? Okay.
yeah,
You're a rare exception
yeah.
because most women like the way their minds work is like they have all these options of clothes, of shoes, of men, right? And it makes it very hard to pick. By nature, they're indecisive, right? And by nature, men are more decisive. I'm not saying they're decisive, but they're more decisive than women, right? And so we're in this day and age where like a young girl who just turned 18 can go on Instagram and be flown out by a guy in Dubai. And if you're not a rich guy from Dubai, you can't compete, right? So they have a lot of options. And conversely, on the men's side, 30% of men under the age of 30 today are either virgins or they haven't had sex in over 12 months,
Mm.
right? Which is not good because young, frustrated men are dangerous. They're dangerous. They go out and they do things and they don't like themselves. So then they don't like others, right? I had a mentor who told me, he said, you cannot feel like when I tell my wife I love her, right? Or you tell your wife you love her, you cannot actually feel the love in their body. You can only feel the love that you feel inside of you rising up, right? And so if I don't love myself, if I cannot bring that emotion out of myself, then I cannot project it towards you. Does that make sense? But if I'm filled with resentment and I don't like me, it's very easy for me not to like you. But really, what I'm doing is I'm projecting my own thoughts of me onto you.
Oh, interesting. Really, very insightful. It's all about so then why my question is, so you're saying you mentioned sexless men and then also sexless women, but then also less people are getting married and
Mhm,
less people are having kids,
mhm,
and this epidemic of loneliness, what
mhm.
is going on there?
So we're more connected with social media, right? but we have less reasons to go out the house. Like you can get your groceries delivered. You can on Amazon, you can have everything delivered, right? So now we're at a point where you have to be intentional about going outside and putting yourself in front of people. Does that make sense? Like you have to go out of your way. In the past, it was a requirement, right? I also think that many men, and this is a subject I love to talk about, many men have shallow relationships, right? Like I have met so many people. I won't even call them a friend. I've met so many. I have one guy I used to work with, and he's a very macho guy, a really tough guy. And he would always say, like, I'm not a fan of anybody. He likes boxing, right? I'm like, you're a fan of Floyd Mayweather, right? He's like, I'm not a fan of any man. I'm not a fan. And it's just like, bro, it's okay to like someone. It's okay. And so men have this shield up, almost like a mask. And it's like they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to be honest. They don't want to be themselves. Like they want to put this facade up, and it's to protect yourself from being hurt, right? I personally teach that that's wrong, that you should be you unapologetically, and you should not care what anyone thinks about you. It's so freeing. But a lot of men, they see it backwards. They've never had a safe space where they could say, hey, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm depressed, I'm disappointed. And here's the thing, Chris, we're humans. You feel that there's no emotion that you can feel in your body that I can't feel in mine. There's no emotion that your wife can feel that you can't feel. So it's like, why are we BSing ourselves and acting like we don't have emotions? No, we do have emotions. Not only do we have them, they're trying to tell us something, right? They're trying to communicate. Your emotions is your subconscious mind's way of communicating to you something. And most people have no clue what it is that it's communicating. Here's the cool thing about it, though. And I just learned this over the past year, and it's fascinating. Chris, did you know that if you have an emotion in your body, right? And then you can consciously say, oh, I'm feeling this emotion. This emotion means this, and I'm feeling this because of this incident that happened.
Mm.
If you can line up that sentence, the emotion goes away. You can go from being depressed utterly to, oh, I'm no longer, it goes away. That's how quick it is amazing. And I've got friends who've been through therapy, and I thought I was crazy. I have friends who've been through therapy, and they tell me the same thing. Once you're able to accurately identify what the emotion is and what it's trying to tell you, it goes away. Okay. Let me give you an example. Would you mind if I use you as an example?
Yeah, go ahead.
So tell me about the last time that you were angry,
Um,
or maybe it was just slightly annoyed.
Annoyed, just when I'm tired, when I'm cold or hot, or like in hungry, and just
Can you
just
give
too
me
much.
one particular situation where you had an interaction with somebody and you were like annoyed or angry or upset?
I mean, like airports or just traffic, holiday seasons.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
So let's talk about traffic. Traffic is perfect, right? So anger. What is anger? Anger is the sense that something that you value is being threatened. That's all it is, right? So why do people get angry in traffic? It's because I value my time and I feel as though it's being wasted sitting here behind these fucking cars. Does that make sense? So once you put that together, once you have that sentence and you say it to yourself, the anger goes away because your body now realize it's a message that you've now decoded. Does that make sense? And once you decode it, you're no longer upset.
hmm.
It's so interesting. I've learned that is the way. I used to have a mentor who would say, "You want to learn how to go from being angry for from weeks to days to minutes to seconds," but he never said how. That is how you do it. You must identify, okay, what is the emotion I'm feeling and what does it mean? And let me just put it all together. And once you do that, the emotion goes away. So I teach men that you can either live in a beautiful state or a state of suffering. And life is too short to fucking suffer. So this is why I help men really understand what their emotions are so that you can like live the life that you want to live it on your terms. And people are going to judge you. It's your job to just not care, right?
And then with these days, it's I mean, it's very easy to not care what other people think because I mean, historically, it's like you were kind of under this social pressure, and if you were shunned, then you're kind of. But now it's like there's so many. You talk about men are so passive and unattractive these days,
Mhm.
and one thing was is interesting is if men are direct and aggressive, they will be. How does this play into favor with the Me Too and wokeism and and people saying, "Oh,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
harassing me."
Yeah, so in the workplace, you know what's funny? That's funny. I watched this one comedian live. It was hilarious. He said, "How in the hell am I supposed to know if I can if I can have sex with a coworker if I don't ask her?" Right? Like how do I know? Right? But yeah, so things get tricky in the workplace. But I also believe that corporate America is a landmine. I think it is unproductive. I think that time is wasted, money is wasted. So many corporations. I'll move it outside the workplace. Here's what I will say. Um, Aggression, like men have testosterone. It is our normal hormone that makes us assertive, direct, confident, aggressive, right? I had someone say to me that testosterone is the hormone that allows you to do difficult things and enjoy the process of getting that done, right? And we have significantly more than women. And I'll tell you, and I'm going to tie back into the first question of what's wrong with marriages today. Um, Imagine that you and your wife, let's say that a midget, I'm going to be dramatic. Let's say a midget walks up to your home, Chris, and he says, "Hey, Chris, this is a beautiful home. That's a beautiful woman. I want you to get the hell out. Both these are mine now." Right? In scenario A, you cower down and you say, "Okay," and you run away. In scenario B, you say, "Fuck you," you kick him and say, "Get off my porch," right? In the second one, you're aggressive, you're masculine, right? You're direct. In the first one, you're passive. Which one do you think is going to turn your wife on? Which one do you think is going to turn your wife off?
The second one will be turn on, and then
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. Now, here's the problem with women, and it's counterintuitive. What you do, they have things that if you can make the wrong decision, or not the wrong, you can make a decision that in the short term you would think, yes, that's the right decision based on her emotions. But if you keep making that decision long term, you are shooting yourself in the foot. It's almost like I love ice cream. We're in Texas, right? I love Bluebell ice cream. And when I'm eating Bluebell ice cream, I'm enjoying myself. If I eat too much Bluebell ice cream, there will be problems. You understand the analogy here, right? Okay. So, um, let's just say that a guy, let's say a wife says, "Hey, love, I would love to go on a vacation." But let's say that these guys, they have no money saved. They've got like $2,000 to their name total, and the vacation would cost most of that. And let's just say he wants to say no, but he also doesn't want to see her pout and whine and bitch and moan and complain because he knows that's what she's going to do. If he says yes, she's going to jump up and down and say, "Yay, I love you, thank you." Right? But you and I would both agree that that is a bad long-term decision, correct?
right,
Okay. Now, let's reverse it. If he says no, she's going to bitch, moan, and complain in the immediate. But do you know what that does for him long term? It makes her realize he can stand up to me. He's not a coward. He's not afraid of my emotions. He told me no, and then he told me to go sit the hell down. And that turns me on. That is how it works. So you either do the right thing now, which leads to the wrong thing later, or you do the wrong thing now and it leads to the right thing later. So here's what I tell them: do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. Do what benefits you. Do not worry about what she wants. It doesn't matter what she wants. Because if a woman likes you, she'll want to do whatever the hell you want to do. She just wants to do it with you. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Like, you ever had a woman who likes you so much, she's just like, "Look, I don't care what we do. We can go get ice cream. We can sit here and watch a movie. Like, I don't care as long as I'm with you."
hmm,
Right? Those are the kind of relationships that I think men should strive for. And in order to have that, you have to get rid of your people pleasing nature and you have to just say, "This is what I want to do. And this is what we're doing. If you don't want to do this, then you can leave. Or if you're going to stay and have a bad attitude, you can leave too, because that's not going to work for me." Okay. So it's all about just doing what you want to do. And that is my main message for me.
yeah, yeah, fascinating. And what books can you recommend for because there's books on like toxic masculinity and there's like healthy masculinity. What books do you recommend?
Got you. So I don't believe in toxic masculinity. I think that's bullshit. That is not a real thing. There's just masculinity. That's all there is. They call it toxic when it shows up in a way that they don't want it to show up. Okay. For example, masculinity is physically aggressive, right? Like that's what we are. Okay. So if someone comes to your home to rob you, I'm sure your wife would like you to get physically aggressive, correct?
Oh yeah,
Okay. So that's not toxic, it's masculinity. Okay. Now, by the same token, if a man is putting his hands on a woman and abusing her and all that, it's still just masculinity. It just showed up at a time in a fashion where you didn't like it. It's not toxic. It's just masculinity. That's it, right? And I'm glad you brought that term up because like it makes men think that there's something wrong with them, and
Yeah.
that's just their nature. Could you imagine if every time a dog? Do you have any dogs?
I did have a dog. Yeah.
Okay. Imagine every time your dog barked, it got really sad. Like, fuck, I just barked, man. No, that's part of its nature. It is in our nature to be aggressive. It is in our nature to be decisive. It is in our nature to be direct. So why are we shunning ourselves for it? Fuck what the media is talking about. All those guys are depressed too, right? So yeah, I mean, there's lots of books, a book recommendations on what specifically.
Well, there's one that's been recommended is Way of the Superior Man or
Hmm.
Fire in the Belly.
Hmm.
But just for personal
Um,
development.
You know what's interesting? I have so many books I've read. I'm hesitant to um, suggest one just because almost every time I read a book, especially when it comes to relationships, because there's no one right way to to have a relationship. There's many ways. There are things that you can do that are wrong, quote unquote. There's a lot of ways to fuck one up. But every time I read a book on relationships, I have to come to the conclusion that this author has injected their opinion into here. And I'm not really interested in their opinion. I'm interested in science, in biology, in facts, and data, right? For example, fact. It is a fact of human nature that whatever you have access to over a long period of time, you tend to start to take for granted. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Regardless, it could be a person, it could be a car, it could be a job or whatever, right? And so I tell men it's easier to have a relationship with two women than it is with one. Because when you're with one and you're away from the other, she has time to miss you and not take you for granted. When you spend all day with one woman, she's likely going to take you for granted. Does that make sense? And
interesting.
so, like, I've not come across any book yet that had just facts on dating and relationships. There's a lot of opinions. And so, if I just think that if I'm going to recommend a book, I should be recommending the whole thing as opposed to there's one book that had this really good chapter, and I'd recommend that chapter from that book. And there's another book that had another, 2 to 3 good chapters. But yeah, so for that reason, I don't know if I have any good book recommendations. Like, not one where I'm like, yeah, you should really go sit down and read this particular book.
Yeah. And the next question I have for you is because you were in the tech industry, and so what no, what is the number one tech skill to have and develop?
You could have many tech skills. There's like tech is so big, it's so broad, it's so vast that you're not going to know it all, right? And that's where many people mess up. They try to learn it all, know it all. Um, Here's what I will say. I tell people to figure out what kind of lifestyle you want to live, how much money is that going to cost, and then go find a tech skill that can pay you that, and then go learn that one, right? Um, but then again, there are several tech skills that you can learn. And a lot of things, another popular thing in the tech industry is a guy will learn one skill and then he'll work 2 or 3 jobs at one time. Each of them pays him 100,000. Now he's making $300,000, right? So I don't think it's really a tech skill thing. I think that it's a matter of what lifestyle do you want to live.
Hmm.
But I'll give you a short, simple answer. I would say pick the skill that's going to be the easiest for you to learn with the shortest learning curve. That's what I would say, and that's why I recommend RPA. I'm an RPA developer. Um, the average RPA developer is earning $130,000. I know many of my students have gone on to go get RPA professional gigs and work two, three at a time, and they're crushing it, killing it, making two, $300,000 a year, working maybe 20, 30 hours a week because it's all project-based work, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. So I recommend RPA, but then again, it's because it's the simplest, easiest, shortest learning curve that I know. If there was something with a shorter learning curve, I would be recommending that one instead.
Yeah. And how come and when you say RPA for the people that don't know
Mhm.
what that is, what is that?
So RPA is robotic process automation, right? I usually don't spell it out because now that I've spelled it out, you still don't know what the hell it is, right? So it's just marketing. Basically, think about it this way. It's like coding, except it's dragging and dropping instead of like writing code. So it's a lot easier. The analogy that I give people is let's say that you build homes and let's say that I build homes, right? Let's say that I build homes the old traditional way, like brick and mortar, right? Let's say that you 3D print homes. So you just push a button and it prints a wall. And you push another button and it prints. Who do you think is going to become more proficient at building houses faster, me or you?
The 3D printer, just like
You.
faster, right?
Exactly. So RPA is just like coding, is just like any other automation skill. It's easier to learn because it's drag and drop and it's very simplified.
Hmm. How can people find you and reach out to you and follow your socials, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. So they can follow me on Instagram at the RPA guy. That's my Instagram, and on there I talk about tech, I talk about dating, I talk about relationships, I talk about women, I talk about masculinity, I talk about a lot of things on there. And then they can also follow me. Let me pull it up. I want to tell you exactly. They can also follow me on Instagram at King's Corner. I started a podcast recently, and it's called King's Corner. Um, and that's like strictly masculinity content. And it is King's Corner podcast, no underscores, no anything fancy like that on Instagram. And that one is more masculinity, just dating and relationships and things like that.
Mm, fascinating. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, and I really enjoyed the conversation. It's and keep up the great work and happy holidays.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you for having me.